Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to episode number 63 of the Primetime Rundown right here on the Eastern Observer, presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Alongside my man, Rob DeLuca, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot thank Casey Bryant, our good friend, enough for pinch hitting in for our man, Ian Schraier, who is on the injured list here tonight. Had to deal with some family stuff. So, Ian, we do hope to see you back in the next couple of weeks. He is on a 2-week injured list stint, so we hope that he will be better soon. Casey Bryant, how are you and how are things in Illinois?
Things are good here in Danville. They call me Jordani Valdespine for my pinch hitting prowess. So things are going well here with the Vermilion County Bobcats, the latest franchise in the SPHL. Go follow at VC Bobcats on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. There's my little plug. And but life is good out here. We have Wi-Fi. We have a couch. I assembled nightstands over the weekend. A lot of progress being made. Very exciting in my world.
Look at you. Rob DeLuca, we have light over by you. Now we just have to get this damn backdrop over to you.
Soon enough, Joey J. Soon enough, the backdrop will come, and we will make it work. And then, of course, when I go back to Fairfield in time, I'm sure the backdrop obviously won't fit, so that'll just cause more chaos, because chaos is what we do on this show. But we have fun doing it, and oh boy, do we have a fun one tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, our show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Their newest album is called Free Cake. It's out now. Play loud. Listen now on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, and Spotify. We've got a pair of fantastic guests who, actually one of which is backstage right now, Kyle Barber, managing editor of SB Nation's Baltimore Beatdown for the Baltimore Ravens. We are going to continue our segments of previewing every single division within the NFL. We also have managing and editor-in-chief of Blogging the Boys, SB Nation, home of the Dallas Cowboys, RJ Ochoa will be with us as well. So a lot of good things coming up ahead. So let us get our good man in Kyle Barber here with us. Kyle, thank you so much for coming on here, and welcome to the Primetime Rundown.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and you kind of got a little bit of what our recurring guest Casey Bryant's all about, just comedian stuff. So expect a few funny questions from him. But Kyle, so let's get things started here with the AFC North and the Baltimore Ravens. First off, I want to start off with this here, guys. This we found out, I think it was this morning, where Lamar Jackson actually is getting a statue built out at University of Louisville. Did you get a chance to talk to him about that today at all at training camp?
Unfortunately, Lamar is dealing with COVID for the second time, so he hasn't been anywhere near anybody, at least for the media, since day one of training camp. He won't be returning for 10 days, and that was on Wednesday of last week. So it's going to be, tragically, a while before I get to talk to Lamar Jackson. Gus Edwards is another guy. Yeah. It's going to be a moment.
Yeah, and you know what? And it's unfortunate to say. It's almost like, we lose track of who went on the COVID list, or who's been gone for a long time, and et cetera. And it's just a conversation no one likes to have. So that's why I asked, and I was like, yeah, that's we lose track of everybody with that. But guys, let's keep on moving forward here. AFC North, Baltimore Ravens. We got to see last year Lamar Jackson really take a big leap forward. Talk about what you expect this 2021 campaign to look like for the Baltimore Ravens.
I expect a lot of the same in regards to the defense. They kept most of their playmakers outside of Yannick Ngakoue, who joined the Las Vegas Raiders, and Matt Judon, who signed with the New England Patriots. 2 pass rushers, their starting tandem. They left in free agency, but the Ravens did their best to replace him by re-signing Pernell McPhee and Tyus Bowser. They also drafted Odafe Owe with their second first-round selection in this draft. They acquired that from the Kansas City Chiefs after they traded Orlando Brown Jr. to KC and got a little bit of a picks haul there and some swaps. Also, they just signed Justin Houston to a 1-year deal worth up to $4 million. So a lot of the same on defense. As for the offense, they are continuing to build and surround Lamar Jackson with weapons and a full offense to utilize. Kevin Zeitler is who they picked up in free agency for right guard. Alejandro Villanueva they picked up for right tackle to replace Orlando Brown Jr., as I mentioned. They also drafted Rashad Bateman, Tylan Wallace. That's their second draft in, I believe, 3 years, where they drafted 2 wide receivers in the draft. And then also signed Sammy Watkins to a deal, which is proving to be pretty solid in a selection, because I've been watching him throughout training camp and he's looked very sharp. He's been battling up against Jimmy Smith. Those two have had really good back and forth matchups, and Jimmy Smith is quite a warrior, as we know, when it comes to playing cornerback.
There's so many different there's so many obstacles in the AFC, because you've got Tennessee, you've got Kansas City, and really this year too, there's even, and I hate to say this because, I'll probably get a few people saying, no, I'm wrong, but New England, because they're never going to go away. It doesn't matter who it is, where it is, who they sign, whatever. And they had a pretty decent offseason as well. And, you can never count out Bill Belichick. But to you, Kyle, who do you feel would be the biggest threat to Baltimore to try and get to that AFC championship that has been long awaited for many years?
Well, first off, I think the big brother to the Baltimore Ravens has been the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
They've lost to them 3 straight years.
Yeah.
And they're not even the same division, yet they've faced each other every single year since Lamar's first year back in 2018. That was his lone loss in 2018 during the regular season. He went 6-1, and they lost in overtime. But they've lost to them every single year. Guess what? They play them again week 2 early in the season, of course. Really frustrating that this matchup can't be a little bit later on, but of course, that's the way the schedule works sometimes. Now, as for the rest of it, there are big opponents in the AFC and also in the AFC North. The Cleveland Browns are formidable foes. They have a really stacked roster, really impressive roster. I actually kind of like watching Baker Mayfield, and he can only trend upward with Orlando Brown Jr. anyways, because they were the worst quarterback wide receiver duo in completion rate in the NFL. So, if they can get a little bit more on the same page, they're even more threatening to make plays. The Buffalo Bills are stacked. They are a formidable foe. The Tennessee Titans, as you mentioned, I don't think they're going to be going away. The Ravens and Titans have been swinging haymakers back and forth, and fortunately, the Ravens were the most recent team to land a strike. So there's some strong opponents in the AFC. It's loaded with talent, but who's the big brother of them all? It's Kansas City until proven otherwise.
Casey Bryant, take it away.
Kyle, it's interesting that you mentioned that the Chiefs are the biggest threat, and talking about the division in particular, it's one of the toughest divisions in football. Last year, you had 3 11 or 12 win teams, and you look at the Bengals, and they've only gotten really better in the offseason. You're expecting a healthy Joe Burrow when he comes back. They just added Jamar Chase in the draft. So you've got a really interesting squad where now the Bengals could potentially move from a 4-win team maybe to a 6 or 7-win team, take that extra step. So if you were to give me a power ranking, specifically looking at the QB, now I know you may be biased towards Lamar Jackson, but if you were to look at Big Ben, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, give me a power ranking of those 4.
Lamar Jackson, it's not bias. I think it's fair to say it's not bias, seeing as Lamar was the unanimous 2019 MVP, the second ever to do so, and his regression was still on par with some of the best metrics. He's also shattering rushing records at a pace unheard of. I mean, and that's including talks with Michael Vick and Cam Newton. That's how dominant this player is. So I don't think it's biased to say that he is number 1 on that list. Baker Mayfield hasn't peaked the way that Lamar has, and he hasn't been as consistent as Lamar has, outside of just throwing a bunch of touchdowns in his rookie season, which, yes, was talented. I respect Baker Mayfield. I think he's one of the 2018 draft class, I think he was the only one of the 5, Lamar included, that could have survived the kitchen fire that was Freddie Kitchens, to be quite honest. That's the only guy that could have done it. Not Sam Darnold, certainly not Josh Rosen. Lamar, I don't think, makes it out of Cleveland alive. I think Baker Mayfield did. So I put him number 2. I like what I've seen out of Baker Mayfield. He is an impressive quarterback. He's on the upswing. He's got another year in a Kevin Stefanski system. I'm impressed with Baker. I think he deserved the number 1 pick a couple of years back too. I don't think like I said, nobody else would have survived the Cleveland Browns back then. Now, third, of course, I'm going to go with Ben Roethlisberger. I think he still has a lot in the tank. I think it's always going to be a battle between the Ravens and Steelers and this entire division. Honestly, it's a nightmare. Every time you play the Bengals, for years on end, AJ Green was carving up the Ravens. The Browns are formidable. But I'm going to put Ben Roethlisberger third, and I'm going to finalize it with Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow is an excellent quarterback, but we just haven't seen enough out of him. I think the addition of Jamar Chase was excellent, but I'm still highly concerned about the injury opportunity for Joe Burrow, because the offensive line still isn't staunch. Like, it's not stout. It's not strong enough to continue to protect him. It felt awkward rooting for sacks and for quarterback pressures as a Ravens fan and a Ravens journalist when Joe Burrow is moments away from an injury. We all knew it when he signed on with the Cincinnati Bengals. Hey, it's only a matter of time until he loses a knee, until he tears an ACL. It's not good when that's a foregone conclusion among fan bases across the NFL. And yet they have the 4th overall pick, I believe, and they go, you know what? That Jamar Chase guy is really good. I think we should take him over who could be the best left tackle and the best blocker in the draft, Penei Sewell. So I like the addition of Jamar Chase. Don't get me wrong, but I'm certainly concerned about him. But that's my list for power rankings for quarterbacks.
So let us get our good friend Ian Schraier, who, by the way, contacted Kyle. So he does apologize for not being here. But he was supposed to be here. But I think first off, Ian, thank you very much for commenting and still being here, not being able to be on the show, but still contributing. So I think before who stands in Baltimore's way of a championship, who comes out of the AFC North? Is it them or Cleveland? Does Pittsburgh finally go away? Kyle, that question's yours.
I think the Steelers struggle to produce this season. They have a very talented defense. I have all the respect in the world for the Steelers organization. I have to, because I've witnessed what they do annually. So I understand and respect the team that they have on the field, but I just don't believe in them as much as I do the Baltimore Ravens offense. They've been one of the top scoring offenses in the league last 2 years. Their defense has been top 5 the last 2 seasons. So comparing those two, I'm going to pick the Ravens in that instance. Cleveland, I think Baker Mayfield is due to break out a little bit further. I don't know where his ceiling is, but I certainly know he is a gunslinger capable of keeping the Browns within any game. We watched it on Monday night against the Ravens late in the season last year, where the Ravens had a top-tier defense, and yet Monday night it's a 47-42 show, a shootout performance, and Baker kept them in to the very end. I think this may be the season Pittsburgh regresses enough to maybe miss the playoffs. They can definitely produce 3 playoff teams, but I don't know if that offense for the Steelers with that offensive line has the juice to go 17 games. I'm curious to see if that happens.
Yeah, and also something, too, you guys also signed, as you brought up earlier, the aforementioned Alejandro Villanueva, who at the time was one of their better offensive tackles as well, and really they're on their offensive line. DeLuca, take it away.
Sure. All right, Kyle, let's go back to the Ravens a little bit here, and let's obviously when you don't make the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, teams will always say, there's rooms for improvement somewhere we have to get better as a team. Where in your mind did you feel the Ravens needed to improve the most, and did they do it?
First and foremost, I think the biggest area necessary for improvement was wide receiver. Everybody's criticized that area, and the Ravens have done their best over a multi-year plan to fix the gap. They can't fix it in 3 months.
That's right.
It's not possible. And Lamar Jackson didn't have his first start until 7 games left in the regular season of 2018. And everybody's like, why don't they have it? Why doesn't he have any weapons? And it's, well, we didn't consider he was going to be this talented this quickly, or he was going to be in right away. We were planning on doing this over the course of a couple seasons. Now, all of a sudden, it's 2021, and they've done their best to improve that position. I mentioned previously, they've drafted Hollywood Brown, Miles Boykin, summer hits, summer misses, Tylan Wallace, Rashad Bateman. They also have Mark Andrews on the team, J.K. Dobbins they drafted, Mark Ingram they brought in, Sammy Watkins they now have on the roster. So they're doing their best to improve the passing game and supplying Jackson with pass-catching talent, because that's what's necessary for this offense. On defense, I believe it's the pass rush. They have all-pro corners in Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters. They have a little bit of weakness at linebacker, just kind of as a whole, not even just outside, but inside as well. Patrick Queen has to elevate his game. He looks very much improved, but that's without pads on. The pads don't come on until tomorrow for training camp, so we won't know if they're actually ready for full-time coverage and making plays and the hits that come with this defense. Pass rush, I think it's improved. I'm curious to see whether or not they lost talent. Matt Judon's a talented outside linebacker. I'm not going to say, hey, they lost him and they got better. That's not true. But I think for the price tag of Judon or Ngakoue, they have Pernell McPhee, Tyus Bowser, Justin Houston, and I believe one more for $2 million less than Yannick Ngakoue afforded them. So they're going to get some compensatory selections out of that. They're going to be able to work with this. I don't know if they necessarily got better at edge rusher, but I think they're doing it's the 80-20 rule of what can we get for lesser value that doesn't impede us as much as it could losing more talent.
Kyle, you brought up earlier about the offensive line in terms of Pittsburgh. I want to stay in Baltimore, though, with the offensive line, because we remember last year when Ronnie Stanley, I believe it was week 8, correct me if I'm wrong, he had a severe ankle injury. He was out for the season. Orlando Brown shifted over from right tackle to left tackle the following week or the week after. And then we got to see a little bit of struggles in the beginning, obviously, with Orlando Brown with that switch. And then eventually it got a little bit better. With Ronnie Stanley now on the PUP, again, I think that's correct, right? He's still on the PUP?
Correct.
Or that's where he starts training camp now. When do you expect him to come back, number one? And number two, who do you expect to fill that role right away? Is it Alejandro Villanueva? Is it somebody else that maybe is like the diamond in the rough type thing? What have you seen there possibly at left tackle?
Good question. Yes, Ronnie Stanley still has yet to practice. He's still on the PUP, suffered an ankle injury, as you mentioned as well. So far, I don't expect him to be on the field for probably a couple more weeks. We did see him hanging out in sweatpants at the stadium practice on Saturday, which is typically a good sign, getting a public viewing of the player and him standing next to the coach, talking and kind of yucking it up a little bit. That's kind of the next step in between, like not seeing him at all and then like suddenly they're on the field. That typically doesn't happen. You always like somehow catch them hanging outside or attending practice just as a viewer, and that was the next iteration of the progress from Ronnie Stanley. As for who's been filling in for the role, I think they're still keeping Alejandro Villanueva at right tackle. I think they kind of want that to be utilized well because of just the ability to run on the right side with Kevin Zeitler, Villanueva, and just offenses typically try to run right a little bit more, especially off that right guard area. So I expect that to be consistent. As for who's at left tackle, they've been really rotating a plethora of tackle and offensive line talent at left tackle. I'm uncertain if they have a solid guy so far. Patrick Mccarthy was taking some snaps on and off, but I haven't seen a bona fide starter quite yet. I'm I'm actually trying to move forward time an extra week so we can see a preseason game and get figured out who is going to be left tackle in the meantime.
Yeah. So, and one final question from me. Now, we obviously we brought up the Orlando Brown trade. He was traded to Kansas City. This man's a 2-time Pro Bowler. He's very stout on the right side. And you had brought up how Alejandro Villanueva so far is taking first team reps on the right tackle position. From what you have seen while covering your Ravens team, what will this Ravens team miss about Orlando Brown, and what could possibly be gained with an Alejandro Villanueva insert into the lineup, both on the field and off the field? What do you think there?
I think the versatility will be missed most by Brown Jr. or Zeus Jr., which is his nickname. Pretty sweet because his father was named Zeus and was also a Baltimore Raven at one time. But I think the versatility was critical. We saw him go from right tackle to left tackle. We saw him compete there and slot in when Ronnie Stanley suffered that season-ending injury. He was really strong against the run. He was able to push guys out of the way. He operated rather well, especially after the absence of Marshall Yanda. He struggled a little bit, of course, but he still performed admirably. As for Alejandro Villanueva, I think his pass blocking is more consistent. I think on a rep-to-rep basis, you're going to see Orlando Brown Jr. win big more frequently and get his guy pushed out of the way or make a really big block. But I think more consistently, you might see Villanueva not lose his rep, but not win his rep, but not lose it. He's just going to be consistent in making enough of a block to allow for Jackson to make a play.
Robert Casey, take it away.
Yeah, so Kyle, I'm wondering now, because you talk about all these different additions, and now it seems like Baltimore has more depth than they really have in previous years. You talk about the additions, especially trying to give Lamar weapons, the adjustments that they've tried to make defensively. So now the next step is getting over the hump, right? And trying to take that next step and become not just AFC champions, but Super Bowl champions. If you don't get to the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship game, if you're the Baltimore Ravens, is that considered a disappointment, given that we're now going into Lamar Jackson's peak, you would say? You've allowed for a stellar rookie campaign, a sort of sophomore regression of sorts. If now he doesn't take that step and join the elite quarterbacks making the championship game every year, like Mahomes or like Brady, is that considered a disappointment? How high are the standards?
I think it's okay. So Lamar Jackson and this team want to win a championship. It's all we hear from them. That's what they talk about, from the defense to offense. Every single player is in there working to win a championship. It's that rings mentality that kind of sports has all been enamored by. That the more championships you have, the better. I think that really spawned from the LeBron James, Michael Jordan debates of, well, Jordan's got 6 rings, well, LeBron's got the stats. So I think that's obviously a conversation for another time. But to get back to your question, I have a differing view that I think it's incredibly unfair to be like, well, if Lamar Jackson can't get to the Super Bowl every year like Tom Brady has done, like, is he a failure at life? And it's like, whoa. Like, do you know how incredibly difficult it is to win a championship in this league, especially when Brady at whatever age is still doing what he's doing? It's incredibly unfair to put him to the standards. Aaron Rodgers, one of the best of all time that we've witnessed, especially in this era, has 1 championship. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger has 2 over the entire course of his career. Drew Brees only had 1. Matt Ryan only got to 1. Joe Flacco somehow managed to win 1. But like, I think it's incredibly unfair to be like, if he's not Patrick Mahomes, who was paid $500 million over the course of 10 years, and if he's not Tom Brady, does he suck? Is he bad? Like, I know that's not what you're saying, but that's really how like national media is really talking about this. Is like, man, Lamar's horrible because at 24 years old, he doesn't already have 3 rings, and he didn't do so against KC. I think, yes, they need to at least get to an AFC championship. To me, that is like the bar at this point. if they were to lose another playoff game, one and done, it would be horrible. If they were to only get to the divisional for the third straight year, I think that would also be really bad, whether or not they win their first round. But I think this team's floor for expectations is the AFC Championship. I know I kind of was like, hey, you can't have the thought that Super Bowl or bust, and then me being like, but if it's actually AFC Championship. But like, that's where this team is built for. They have dumped all their money. They have all the cap space spent. They are in the last year of Lamar Jackson's rookie contract. This is the year that you hope to get it done before the money is too tight on a quarterback contract. But I think it's close.
Well, you know what? And right before DeLuca closes us out here, I want to piggyback off of Casey Bryant's question. So the problem that I have here is that you look at the wide receivers, right? And we've finally gotten to see how J.K. Dobbins as well as Gus Edwards, they have really taken over the running back room, correct? So now, in terms of the wide receiver room, you look and you see the guys that are, I don't want to say, marquee names right now, but you've got a Miles Boykin, you've got a Hollywood Brown, you've got a Sammy Watkins. Those three names don't really stand out outside of Baltimore. Is there somebody that possibly Baltimore could have gone after that could possibly make the difference? Or do you feel also, as a Ravens fan and writer as well, that these three wide receivers, as well as the first round pick, can they get them over the hump?
That's a great question. They attempted to sign other players. Juju Smith-Schuster was a player that they pursued, and Juju re-signed for less to stay with the Steelers.
Yeah.
A lot of people took that as an indictment on the Ravens, when in fact, like, Juju is beloved by the Steelers fan base for the most part. And like, I think honestly, moving sucks so much that you'd probably want to sign with the team that you're already with at the cost of $1 million, because you don't want to pack up your stuff. I just did the move from Colorado to Maryland, so that's my opinion on the matter. I'm a little biased here.
Welcome to the East Coast, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. But they also pursued T.Y. Hilton. He didn't want to re-sign with the Ravens. So I think they pursued the guys that they wanted to, but overall they drafted Rashad Bateman, who looks pro-ready. I say that term and actually mean it, because every year when the Ravens would bring in players, I'd be like, I don't know about this guy. Like, I'm trying not and being a writer, I try to create a little bit of positivity and spin it to where it's a little positive, just because I'm writing for the fan base. But like, I never was like, this guy's insane, he's going to dominate the league. Like, I've never said that, because I'm not going to like pump up the tires on guys that I don't think are fair. I think like I should try and keep some integrity to my journalism. But Rashad Bateman, I've watched him and I'm like, do you know how hard it is to beat Marlon Humphrey for a 30-yard touchdown? Yeah. Like, that is not an easy feat. Marlon plays every snap like it's the last play of the Super Bowl. Like, he's a nightmare to go up against, and Bateman still managed to gain separation. I think it's also noted that like he's not winning these super tough contested catches. He's creating separation against all-pro cornerbacks Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey. It's not that he's getting 50-50 balls and getting fortunate. It's that he's capable of running the routes, getting in and out of his breaks well enough to be open enough to receive passes. Is this group good enough, as you asked? Sammy Watkins, Marquise Brown, Rashad Bateman. I think a huge player left off that list is Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is one of the best tight ends in the league. And I know that you're going off of wide receivers, but the Ravens utilize tight ends probably more than any other team in the NFL. Yeah. So he is another serious threat in this league to make plays. He's probably the fourth best tight end after Waller, Kittle, and Kelsey. So I think with Sammy Watkins, with J.K. Dobbins, with Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, and Marquise Brown, I think that team is capable of making plays and winning in this league in a passing offense and making plays down the field. I really do believe so.
Okay, so then that should do it in terms of the wide receivers. And again, because we have seen a very a big revolving door in terms of the wide receivers. We got to see Des Bryant last year, who really did not do much. So, and that, again, that sometimes could generate the question of, the wide receiver room there's a big question mark there.
Mhm.
And even though that we can see Lamar Jackson has the ability to be very mobile, there sometimes may need to be the need is there for a big name wide receiver at times. Rob DeLuca, close us out.
All right, Kyle. Let's make it real simple. Let's hear some predictions. Baltimore Ravens, their record, what seed they're going to get in the AFC playoff picture, and how far is it going to take them?
Oof. I'm not the big guy in the prediction game. I try to avoid that. That way my opinions can't be looked back on. No, but I think this team is in a super close race for the AFC North. I think they win I think they come out as the winner of the AFC North. I think either 12-5, right? 12-5 because it's 17, 12-5 or
it's okay. You're not the only one who couldn't do that as well.
I did it. I just wasn't certain. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it, right? So I did it. It's like writing answer on a test with a question mark, like 4 + 7 = 11. Like that's what I did. But 12-5 or 11-6, I think they win first in the division, and I think it's like within a game against the Browns after somebody drops a game to another in the division team. As far as how far they go, I think this team is capable of going to the AFC Championship. I think they have to figure out KC to go any further. And until that occurs, until they actually win that game, I can't say like the Ravens are going to win this one. Like I've done that 2-3 years in a row now. I've been wrong every time. Like I'm not betting on the Ravens to win that game until they prove themselves to do it. And the players have said that themselves. They hope to earn a chance at this.
Definitely fair.
I agree with them. Yep.
Definitely
I think Ravens
fair.
have the North, no doubt.
Yeah, so now I have to just do one quick rapid fire here before we get the next guest in, and RJ Ochoa in. Rob DeLuca, Baltimore, where do they go? Will they sit at the top of the division?
Oh yeah, they are winning the North, and it'll be closer than most think, but I think it'll be by about 2 or 3 games. I think so. I think Baltimore wins it very comfortably, rather comfortably. About 12, 13 wins.
Casey Bryant.
I will say they finish with 11 wins and they tie with Cleveland for the division.
Ugh.
I think with Cleveland, if they can get Odell Beckham Jr. back healthy, that is a big factor for them to factor that offense.
That could be a real comeback player of the year award right there. Real big chance of that.
All right, real quick before you guys kick me on out, I want you guys to mock RJ Ochoa because on his the man himself, I get to do it. What up, RJ?
Take it away.
You're muted. You're muted. Perfect. I didn't want to hear you anyways.
Hey, Kyle. Kyle's
awesome. Called Baltimore the Emerald City on this morning's SB Nation NFL show, morning wake up, whatever you call it. You called them the Emerald City instead of Charm City. And I just want to publicly shame you for doing so because I was yelling in my car on the drive home from training camp. I went, this man has done it again.
So I've lived in Texas my whole life. I have no shame in that. I also shouted out Tracy Turnblad. I feel like I'm the only person that ever gives Baltimore that specific, mode of love, Kyle. So my colleagues on the SB Nation NFL show, Kyle knows, hate all over Lamar Jackson. I go to bat for him, and I can't believe Kyle didn't take this opportunity to remind everybody of that. But
I know this. I do agree with this because I had to jump on and fight against Stats and BLG because they were like, I don't know if Lamar's got it, and I don't think you should pay him. And I went, you guys are absolutely insane for that. But I'm going to let you guys enjoy your show and do your thing with RJ. RJ, it was good to see you as always, but you guys all take care. Thank you very much for having me on.
Kyle Barber, ladies and gentlemen. Kyle, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Managing editor of SB Nation's Baltimore Beatdown for the Ravens. And one final time, welcome to the East Coast, Kyle.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. So all good things. RJ, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. And RJ Ochoa, ladies and gentlemen, manager and editor-in-chief of Blogging the Boys, SB Nation, home of the Dallas Cowboys. We really appreciate you coming on, man. How are things?
Oh, everything's going well. Appreciate you guys having me, especially right after Kyle. Kyle's a good friend of mine, and obviously we're all part of the SB Nation universe. And so it's a fun time of year. It's a fun week. Obviously, it's game week for the Cowboys, and so we made it. Hard Knocks starts next week. I mean, everything is rocking and rolling. Kind of, I love football season as much as everybody, but it does kind of organize my life because now every day has its own purposes, and so it's nice to kind of fall into that normal regimen.
So I'll tell you this to start things off. So you have actually come into a dungeon because Rob DeLuca, just a little northeast of you there, is a Giants fan. I'm an Eagles fan, but I won't hold it against you for being a Cowboys guy. That's completely okay. I appreciate you coming on anyway, but if I get a little, if I have a frown on my face, you'll know why. But we're going to keep it civil, everybody.
He'll be a little salty about it. But yes, you are dealing with two Giants fans and an Eagles fan here. So
there you go. Oh, guys, let's get things started here with the Dallas Cowboys. So Dak Prescott's a little hurt, a little banged up. Also, Hard Knocks is entering Jerry World. RJ, let me ask you this to start things off here. And because we know how Jerry World is really Hollywood 2.0, especially out here in New York, we get to hear that all the time. So many Giants fans just, they completely just talk smack about the Cowboys and the rivalries, especially, in Philadelphia, here in New York. It's crazy. But down in the Lone Star State, tell us what you've witnessed with really this upcoming year, because, Hard Knocks is on the campus. And I don't know again, from what we've seen with Jerry Jones, we don't know if he's 100% happy with it, but he kind of has no say in it. What have you witnessed so far?
Well, I would say Jerry is 100% happy with it because the Cow. For all the Cowboys on the field faults over the last quarter century, they have maintained their status as the most profitable, most visible, sporting team in the world, and in a sport that is generally played domestically only here in the United States. I think it's an impressive accomplishment that it supersedes the likes of the European soccer giants, even a lot of baseball teams, obviously, that have more global reach. But that's kind of the Cowboys' way. And I think that's going to be on full display in Hard Knocks. And, I think, a lot of people wonder if it's different with this Cowboys being on Hard Knocks. It really is the same. I mean, they're so used to so much attention anyway. I think, like when the Cleveland Browns were on Hard Knocks a couple of years ago, that had to have been a really large culture shock, even though Baker Mayfield was the number one overall pick at the time. It's been an interesting, last few months this offseason. The Cowboys have unfortunately kind of been here somewhat recently. It was 5 years ago in 2016. They had the 4th overall pick. That was the highest they picked before this year when they picked a 10 before trading back with your Eagles, Joey. And so, at the time, Tony Romo had just missed 12 games the year before. Dak Prescott missed 11 games this past season. The Cowboys didn't address the backup quarterback situation then, although they did spend a 4th-round pick on Dak Prescott himself. This year, they didn't really do that, but they've thrown everything they've gotten at the defensive side of the ball, both draft picks and whatever free agency sprinkling that they've done otherwise. And so there's optimism. And I think the reason there's optimism is because the quality of the NFC East is so down that it stands to reason that this team should perform well and have a lot of success. But there's also, because they're the Cowboys, this high level of expectation. And because they haven't met them, you get questions like, is Mike McCarthy on the hot seat? Could the Cowboys move on from him? Is Mike McCarthy overrated? So they constantly live in this, middle ground between underrated and overrated. And because of that, they're always in the news, which, again, is ultimately what a lot of people believe the Joneses care about more than anything else.
Yeah, well, and not only that, too, but also speaking of Mike McCarthy, too, obviously not really, not a great year after Dak Prescott went down. So much heat was put on him. And I'll tell you this, as an Eagles fan, I kept saying, give him time. Your franchise quarterback went down with a gruesome injury. How are you blaming everything on him right now? And why are you calling for his head in year number 1 when really this is kind of a retooling project? And just a couple of years ago, RJ, we got to see this offensive line really take flight and become the number 1 offensive line in the league. Now they have slowly digressed a little bit. But now, where do you see some improvements? Were there any improvements made this offseason on the offensive line to replace the Travis Fredericks of the world, et cetera?
Well, Travis Frederick retired last year, and the Cowboys did draft Tyler Biadasz, incidentally, in another trade with the Philadelphia Eagles. And so Tyler Biadasz, who actually hails from Wisconsin, where Travis Frederick went to school as well. There's obviously a strong lineage there between the two of them. Is entering year 2, and I think everybody's really optimistic about him. You mentioned obviously the whole offensive line, and it's true that it's withered. I think a lot of national consensus, if you turn on your generic morning talk show on whatever major sports network, a lot of people believe that the Cowboys do still have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, but it has regressed and it has kind of fallen out of maybe the 10th best, 11th best, and even despite that, they're still I think pretty good, but. Last season, their right tackle, Lyle Collins, missed the entire season. Their left tackle, Tyron Smith, played 2 games. So while not only was Andy Dalton in for Dak Prescott or Garrett Gilbert or Ben DiNucci in the lone game against the Eagles as well, everything always comes back to the Eagles. I mean, you're talking about an offensive line that not only was without their top 2 tackles, but because the Cowboys were so ill-prepared, their left tackle last year was a second-year undrafted free agent in Brandon Knight, and their right tackle was a rookie undrafted free agent in Terrence Steele. And so, people have made so much about the Buccaneers returning all 22 starters from the Super Bowl, and that's obviously a lot of continuity. The Cowboys are returning all 11 intended offensive starters. I mean, if you had asked any Cowboys person at this time a year ago to predict, all 11 offensive starters, it would have been the players that are going to start week 1 in Tampa Bay. They've obviously returned continuity with their coordinator and Kellen Moore. In terms of improvements, it's hard to improve when they've got the guys they wanted, but they did add in terms of their swing tackle depth. They added Ty Nsekhe in free agency. But other than that, I mean, that's kind of the only spot they've really addressed offensively in terms of resources. Everything else has been on defense because that has just been so bad for so long now.
Casey Bryant, take it away.
RJ, it's really funny that you talk about how the Cowboys are always towing that line between overperforming and underperforming, overrated, underrated, especially given how tumultuous last season was in the entirety of the NFC East. Everyone dumped on it being the NFC least, but I'm pretty sure in the second half, as a division, they had one of the best win percentages. Granted, that was by virtue of how bad all 4 teams started, but it was a division wherein virtually all 4 teams were in the race until the last quarter of the last game of the regular season. So I'm curious, if we flash back to 2010 with the Seahawks, right, when they won the NFC West when they were 7-9, the next year the 49ers won 13 games and ran away with the division. Do you expect something similar this year where one team is able to make that next step and become a winner? Could it be the Cowboys now that they'll have Dak Prescott for a whole season?
I really like that comp, actually, with the 2011 San Francisco 49ers. And some of that was obviously getting a new coach, although this isn't Mike McCarthy's first year with the team. I think there is an infusion of some new. Obviously, one of the things, I mean, people don't want to hear excuses from Mike McCarthy because they're Cowboys fans and they're fickle and, their attention spans are short sometimes. But, I mean, I think it's important to remember that Mike McCarthy sat out the 2019 season. And, he made a big deal about this. And so he kind of, widened the target on himself in that respect. But he literally put together a plan for how he was going to return to coaching in the NFL. And like on day 6 of that plan, COVID hit and everything, obviously changed as far as we know it and what the NFL has looked like since March of last year. And so, I mean, I think if there's a candidate for there to be a team to explode like that within the NFC, it's certainly the Cowboys. I mean, with all due respect, I can't imagine it being the Eagles or the Giants. And I think, one of the points of contention I've had with, I guess, national consensus this offseason has been a lot of people have just fallen in love with the Washington football team. And I mean, that's a little bit, confusing to me. Yes, they won the division and they beat the Cowboys twice. They swept them for the first time since 2012. But the first game they played the Cowboys in was the first game that Zach Martin didn't play. And granted, their defense just overwhelmed them. They took a cheap shot on Andy Dalton, knocked him out, and won that game handily. But the Cowboys did kind of start to build momentum entering Thanksgiving. They won the Sunday before, which was their first game out of their bye. You'll recall that was the game we found out about Mike McCarthy smashing the watermelons. They beat the Minnesota Vikings the Sunday before Thanksgiving, and then tragedy struck within the organization. And that week, which is already a difficult week for them just from a football perspective because it's so condensed, really obviously took a turn. And life is so much more important than football. But Mike McCarthy himself even said in the lead up to that Thanksgiving Day game against Washington that he had no idea what to expect. I mean, they were all just kind of going through the motions after the loss that they endured as a team. And so, Washington was 7-9, Dallas was 6-10, and people really think that Washington is this like world beater of a team. Their defense is great, but I believe they were fifth in or second in DVOA, defensive DVOA last year. And generally, there's regression to the mean in a lot of these things. And so I do think the Cowboys regressing to the mean. I believe in 2019 they lost 7 one-possession games. And so generally that kind of stuff stabilizes. And so, that's, I think to your point, Casey, a team swings 8 wins in 1 year and you wonder, well, how did that happen? And it's because all those things where they were in one side of the spectrum in different measurements or different statistics, they regress to the mean. And that's why they're here now. And that's why next year they'll fall off or whatever the case may be.
So now, just before we get to DeLuca, I want to piggyback off of that. And you brought up about how, everyone is glamming over the Washington football team. It just makes no sense to me because you also look at really what, the general fan would look at, and is the schedule. And obviously, whenever you clinch the division, you always will play whoever it may be, wherever the mathematics line up, and you're always going to be playing that division winner. You're going to be playing whoever it may be, and you're going to be going up against other divisions, winners from a year prior. Now you've gotten to see what Washington has done. They've lost this person. They've acquired this one. But think about it here. And I want to go off Dallas Cowboys for a second and just stick to the Washington football team because you made up a perfect point. And since this is the week of the NFC East, RJ, we're going to put you on the spot. Washington, to me, it's almost like they're a flash in the pan. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think there's much correcting to have there. My deepest fear going into the draft was that Washington would be the team that traded up to draft Justin Fields. And I don't know why they weren't that team. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, we're all going, you can bank on the fact that, a month, 6 weeks from now, there are going to be some great memes. There are going to be some great moments. He's going to have a great press conference moment after a great win. And everybody will laugh. But, I mean, come December, the bottom will come out. That's just kind of the Ryan Fitzpatrick way. And, you guys had Kyle Barber on, who is the me for our Baltimore Ravens site, the me for our Philadelphia Eagles site, Brandon Lee Gowton, who's a great friend of mine, brought up a point to me last week when Aaron Rodgers returned. And I hadn't really thought about it this way. But the NFC East does not play the NFC North this season. However, the Washington football team won the division, and so did the Green Bay Packers. A lot of people thought that Aaron Rodgers could end up with the Denver Broncos. The NFC East does play the AFC West. So hypothetically, if Aaron had ended up as a Denver Bronco, the entire division would have had to have faced him this season. But because he returned to the Green Bay Packers, however harmonious we believe that to be, he will only play against the Washington football team. So you're talking about that game that would have maybe been against Jordan Love for Washington is now against Aaron Rodgers. I don't care how good that defense is, that really impacts them in their potential win-loss total this season. Also, on the subject of division or of schedules, the way the NFL scheduled NFC East games this season is very interesting to me. The first thing I noticed was that 4 of Dallas's final 5 games are within the division. I don't know why the league jammed them all in that way. And Washington, I believe their last 5 games in a row are all against the NFC East. Which is strange. And what's more is within that 5-game stretch, Washington plays Dallas and Philadelphia each twice in 3 weeks. I might get the order wrong, but it's something like they go Philadelphia, Dallas, Philadelphia, Dallas. And all of those games are in December. And I'm sure you guys agree that Ryan Fitzpatrick is a little unreliable in that month. So the one quarterback, the one person that they hitch their wagon to, their most important games are going to come at the time of the year where he is least reliable. And so there's a lot of people taking different overs or whatever on Washington this season, and I think that's fine, but I think that's hollow when it's all said and done.
RJ, I just want to make sure for all of our fans that they know this. So exactly what RJ said. We're just taking a peek at the Washington football website here. So they play week number 2 on Thursday Night Football, September 16th. They will be hosting the Giants, and then fast forward all the way 12 weeks later to week 14, and exactly what you said, December 12th, they host Dallas, then they're in Philadelphia week 15, in Dallas week 16, and then they host Philadelphia in week 17, and then in week 18, which sounds very weird to me, they go and finish the season in East Rutherford. It doesn't make any sense, this whole thing. It's very, very odd. DeLuca, take it away.
Sure thing. Yes. I apologize. I'm pretty sure I keep cutting out. I'm about ready to take a sledgehammer to my router. But nonetheless, RJ, it seems to be lining up for the potential for the Dallas Cowboys to run away with the NFC East. But because of what we saw last year, that may not be the case. Who do you see as the biggest threat to the Cowboys' chances at the NFC East? And what is it? I'll kind of piggyback off of a comment we have here from Ian Schraier. What is the big X factor to Dallas making sure they maintain this division right here? We pull up the question here, what do they have to do? And more importantly, who's going to be challenging them? Because had it not been for the Eagles throwing the game in Week 17, the New York Giants would have won the division at 6-10, which is ridiculous to think about, but is the truth, sadly.
Stay on topic, DeLuca. Stay on topic.
It technically is on topic.
We get it. Are the Giants the biggest threat, or is it once again the Washington football team?
Well, so first of all, two things. First of all, one, I unfortunately don't think Dallas is going to run away with this because all their divisional games are at the end of the season. You know, it's going to be impossible for them to lock unless the rest of the division truly is that bad, and that's just unlikely ultimately. But second of all, you mentioned that Week 17 game from last year. Something else, my Philadelphia Eagles colleague and I, we have a podcast that we do ourselves that we air on both of our networks' feeds called the NFC East Mixtape, where we recap the state of the division every week. And we did a what if a couple of months ago on what if the Philadelphia Eagles won that game, because then the New York Giants would have won the division, the Washington football team would not have. And you'll recall that originally the Dallas Cowboys had the 10th overall pick, the Giants had the 11th, and the Eagles had the 12th. And so if you swap New York, Washington has the 11th overall pick, and it was the 11th overall pick that the Giants traded back with the Chicago Bears to ultimately, send Justin Fields to Chicago. So that win, however substantial it might have been for Washington, not only, guaranteed them a first-round loss against the Buccaneers, but it might have theoretically costed them Justin Fields when it's all said and done. It's kind of the cost to winning a hollow division, for different teams. And we thought that was really interesting. But I don't think that Washington is the greatest threat to Dallas. I mean, their defense is great, but I do expect just some standard regression just because that's the way football goes. Terry McLaurin, I do think is criminally underrated. I'm not a believer in just, Curtis Samuel was great with Ron Rivera in Carolina, so he's obviously going to be great with him in Washington. Things don't work that way either. With all due respect to the Giants, I'm super, super low on them this year. I've said several times, the only team in the entire conference that I'm 100% confident will be worse than them are the Detroit Lions. I've seen enough Jason Garrett football to really kind of have had my share there. And the fact that Jason Garrett's bringing already back Alfred Morris, Joe Looney, working out Andy Jones, it's just the Cowboys players recyclement tour over there. But I do believe in Daniel Jones's athleticism, so maybe he powers through. I think the greatest threat might be the Philadelphia Eagles, because I think, that team has, and maybe I just say that from a Cowboys slant because Philly's always giving the Cowboys so many fits. But I'm intrigued by Jalen Hurts. I mean, we haven't totally seen him, and we don't understand who he is as an NFL quarterback, and that can change everything. And that's really why my answer is Philadelphia, because I feel like there's not a large, but there's a substantial sample size on Daniel Jones. We haven't seen him take that leap, although I certainly believe he has the athleticism to do it. I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be the player to do that, regardless of all the fun jokes and memes that will come out. And so Jalen Hurts has that. I hate to call it an X factor, but I know that was the question. I think he has that. Devontae Smith, I know he's banged up right now. I think that the Eagles are in just such an interesting place right now that I'm never somebody who's willing to write them off, even despite all the internal combustion they've had over the last couple of years.
So just before we get to Casey Bryant, I want to put up a comment from our good friend, Director of Media Relations at Wagner College on Staten Island. As a lifelong suffering Jets fan, Washington is going to get Fitzmagic and then Fitztragic all in 17 weeks. Enjoy. Okay, well, there you go. That's pretty much what a majority have said so far. Casey Bryant, take it away.
Well, I firstly wanted to friendly point out to RJ that even though the Giants in his measure may be getting distinctively worse under Jason Garrett, Saquon Barkley will be back this season, so no more Alfred Morris. And
Sure.
they did just sign Kenny Golladay from Detroit, which gives them a legit number one weapon.
There's a lot to like there, but the Saquon thing is actually what troubles me more than anything, because I do believe that Jason Garrett's, the Cowboys have chased who they were in the 1990s forever, and that's why they held on to Jason Garrett as long as they did. And it's very clear and obvious that Jason Garrett wants to build a 2014-2016 Cowboys offense that featured DeMarco Murray and obviously Zeke Elliott. And Saquon is far more talented than either of them were at that particular point in their respective careers. But I mean, building your offense around a running back, let alone one coming off of a significant injury in the year 2021, just isn't the most efficient utilization of resources. I think that he wants Kenny Golladay to be his jump ball, Des Bryant type guy. And I don't doubt that there will be some points of success. I've been hurt by Jason Garrett, and so I'm hesitant to go down that path personally.
Well, then let me follow up then by recircling it to the Cowboys. And let's just say that if the Giants don't take that next step, they don't have a winning record. Washington and Philadelphia, they're still in a growing stage. What does it say about Dak Prescott? We were just speaking with Kyle about the expectations levied on Lamar Jackson this season as he enters his prime. Dak Prescott has 4 years on Lamar Jackson. He's going to be 28. If he doesn't take that next step this season, let's say hypothetical, they go 7-10 this year, finish second in the division. What kind of indictment is that on Dak Prescott? What is the pressure that is on his shoulders this season?
Well, so obviously, I mean, like the context of that would be necessary, right? Like are they losing one possession games? Like, is their defense really bad? But generally, I mean, that's a fair question. And I think to this point in his career, at Blogging the Boys, we've been, huge supporters of Dak from day one and understood what he offers to the Cowboys from day one. We've championed the cause for the Cowboys to pay him since they first could. I don't know why the Baltimore Ravens haven't paid Lamar Jackson yet. It only gets more expensive. And so, but if that were to happen, if you look at Dak Prescott's career, 2016, obviously 13-3, boom. Everybody agrees it's a great season. 2017, I think everybody's willing to accept that there's the Zeke Elliott, will he, won't he be suspended, back and forth, drama, what's going on. Earl Thomas chases them down on Christmas Eve. It was a really, kind of turbulent year for them. In 2018, he struggled early on offensively because the Cowboys decided to let Des Bryant walk and fix that by signing Allen Hurns and Tavon Austin. Or trading for Tavon Austin, rather. And so, I mean, not exactly a winning formula until they traded for Amari Cooper. And so a lot of people thought early on, well, he's only great because he's got a great wide receiver. And, it's a weird thing that, great wide receivers help good quarterbacks be great. I mean, it's a weird coincidence. But 2019, Dak took a huge leap offensively, individually. First season under Kellen Moore as his OC. John Kitna was his quarterback's coach. But the Cowboys, I mean, we're just kind of plagued by Jason Garrett. And so last year, to your point, Casey, was kind of the first, all right, this is our first true sample size at that. He's freed. He's Andy Dufresne at the end of this tunnel. Let's see what this guy's really all about. And individually, obviously, he put up a lot of numbers, gaudy numbers and statistics last season that, made him really, really valuable in fantasy worlds and things like that. But the Cowboys, many people will note, we're 2-3, even if you count that game he got injured, the Cowboys won against the New York Giants. And so it's time. And it's time because, I mean, he's been paid. And so that changes the context. That changes the narrative. There are still a lot of Cowboys fans who say, I wish the team hadn't paid him. He's mediocre. He's not this. He's not that. And so, you're never going to satisfy everyone. But the expectation's high. I mean, when you introduced me, you talked about, I forget who it was winning comeback player of the year. Odell Beckham Jr. I think that Dak is, I mean, because some of that is narrative. Some of that is the story behind who you are. And Dak is really, for his work off the field, assimilated himself into a different stratosphere of being beloved by NFL fans. He's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. He's very likable. He's very popular. He's still very young. So I think he does have the inside track towards that. But yeah, I mean, it's time. I mentioned it. You've got all your offensive starters that were with you last season returning. You have an offensive coordinator in his third season with the team. You have a head coach in his second season. You didn't have the social distancing OTAs and mini camps. Like, you had everything you could possibly have. Granted, you're coming back from injury yourself, but you've been telling us that you're ready to go. I mean, now is the time. If they go 7-10, it's more than fair to say, you know what, man? You're in the really crappy NFC East. Why do you not have more to show for it than 2 division titles and 1 wild card playoff one?
So now I'm not gonna close this out, but I'm gonna be like kind of the eighth inning guy here. So RJ, my question to you is that this upcoming Thursday is the Hall of Fame game. Is Cowboys Steelers. Number one, how excited are you? And number two, to see Jimmy Johnson get inducted, to see and to hear all of the drama and again, I hate to completely revolve, kind of circle back with the word drama, but that's really what, again, Jerry World is all about, what Dallas Cowboys are sometimes all about under Jerry Jones. And we know the quote unquote drama that went down with Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones as well. Do we expect to see Jerry in attendance there? What's going to be the deal there? What do you expect to see out in Canton on this upcoming weekend?
Well, I'm definitely really excited. We get to start kind of the weekly ritual. Obviously, we have the bye week at the end of the preseason, but it's nice to kind of get into that rhythm. As just briefly, I'm probably most excited for Drew Pearson. I mean, somebody who's waited far too long to get into the Hall of Fame. People think that Aaron Rodgers coined the term Hail Mary, but it was Roger Staubach and Drew Pearson back in 1975. Cliff Harris is also going into the Hall of Fame, but Jimmy, to your point, Joey, he's waited. He was a part of the class of 2020, and so obviously with last year's festivities not happening, it's really kind of been pent up. And you mentioned drama. The quote that made the most rounds after the Cowboys kind of State of the Union press conference when they first got to Oxnard was Jerry talking about how he messed it up. I know this is a family show, so I won't tell you exactly what he said. But I mean, it is a really tragic tale. It's a romantic tale in a lot of senses. It's unfortunate. We have a show on our podcast network at Blog on the Boys with Tony Casillas, who won the first 2 Super Bowls with those teams, the ones Jimmy coached. And I mean, it's fun to look back on, but it's really frustrating. It's frustrating because it went south the way it did. It's frustrating because they didn't win 4 in a row. It's frustrating because here we are now, over 25 years later from Jimmy's second Super Bowl, and he's still not in the Ring of Honor. So you've still got these, like boiling pent up frustrations with one another. I totally expect Jerry to be there. I expect Troy to shed a lot of tears. I expect Michael Irvin to shed a lot of tears, and Emmitt Smith. And it's really delightful, if you're a Cowboys fan that's around the age of 30 or, plus minus. Those are people you've heard lots of stories about and you've seen and you've watched highlights. Maybe you remember from when you were younger. And it does feel, it kind of feels like you finally have the whole set. Like when I was younger, I think I'm a little older than you guys. McDonald's did this giveaway once when the Inspector Gadget movie came out. And you had to go and get like every piece of it to build the overall Inspector Gadget. And so it feels like we finally have gotten the last piece with Jimmy being in with his triplets and everything. And I know the Hall of Fame has put a time limit on speeches because of the fact that there is such a large class, because last year was even the centennial class at that. But I'm really pumped for Jimmy. I'm really excited. I think he'll rip off a "How About Them Cowboys." ESPN did a great story actually today talking about the origin of that phrase. And Jimmy changed a lot. I mean, Jimmy really changed a lot. And the Cowboys had the success that they did in an era that's really fascinating in U.S. history with such an economic boom in the 1990s. I mean, they're still really synonymous with those times and with those days. And so, watching some of the people that were involved in that be older, have gray hair, have gold jackets, have bronze busts. I mean, it dates it all. But it kind of feels like the Friends reunion that just happened. They were all a little bit older, but we've all kind of been waiting for this moment for a very long time.
Yeah, and you know what? Back in 2006, my father, diehard Cowboys fan, and why I'm an Eagles fan, my uncle, I decided to go his brother's route. But 2006, I was in Canton. I got to see Troy Aikman's induction. One of the coolest
and Rayfield Wright.
Yeah, and to be a part of the whole festivities, John Madden, Reggie White. Obviously, I had my Reggie White jersey on, but still getting to see the reason, obviously, I was there was for Troy Aikman, for my dad and my mom. But, just to see all of that commence and, it's really good stuff. And I know what you're talking about with that time limit on the speeches. I'll never forget baking as a 10-year-old child out there at Fawcett Stadium. Brutal stuff over there in August. So one of our viewers, John Gonzalez, I saw that game. I was 12. The Staubach Hail Mary pass to Drew Pearson in the final seconds of the playoffs against the Vikings. So see, we got some other Cowboys fans here and going down memory lane here. Rob DeLuca, take it away.
All right, RJ, before we let you go here, let's let's just do it real quick. First of all, our Ian Schraier, who's not here, brought up Micah Parsons. So, what do you think of him? And then I'll ask you the rapid fire question to close you out.
He's looked great. The Cowboys, as I mentioned, traded back from 10 to 12 in the first round. They got sniped. I mean, they wanted Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn. They went the 2 picks in front of them, Patrick to the Denver Broncos and J.C. to the Carolina Panthers. And so, the Cowboys did ultimately maneuver out of it. They got their next most coveted guy in Parsons. They picked up a 3rd-round pick, and they ensured that Devontae Smith wound up with a team that they probably are threatened by less in the moment in the Philadelphia Eagles rather than the New York Giants. And so, I mean, Parsons is kind of as advertised. He's a linebacker that can do it all. He's really fast. He's really strong. He can rush the passer. He can cover. He makes up for the Leighton Vander Esch pick, seemingly, of 3 years ago. And so there's a lot to like, but it's I think people are ready to be excited. That's kind of what he's done. People are ready to believe, but they're just holding back and they're limiting their levels of excitement because it is training camp. And so he's checked every box at this point in time. It's now just a matter of, what, I've double checked all the work on this test. I've got to hand it in. I've got to let it be graded, and I've got to let the chips fall where they may.
All right. And now let's do it as we have to wind down here. So you say it's not going to be a runaway, but let's see what you think. Dallas Cowboys, what's their record? And if they're making the playoffs, what seed are you giving them? And how far is that going to take them?
I think they're an 11-7, 12 or 11-7, 11-6, 12-5 team. Kind of around there. If you told me the over/under was 10.5, I'd probably sweat a little bit. If it was 11.5, I'd really struggle. I think they're right somewhere between 10 and 12 wins. I think that should easily win the NFC East. I don't think they'll be the first seed with that kind of record. But I could see them maybe, climbing up to the 3 seed. I'm very fascinated to watch the Green Bay Packers this season. And if they do regress, I mean, Aaron Rodgers has obviously set the bar very high. And if there is some regression there, I think there's an argument that, the NFC North is not exactly strong. I mean, if they don't have the Packers, I mean, the Vikings aren't challenging. The Bears, I love Justin Fields, but, not obviously they're not going to have the kind of success we're talking about in year one. And the Lions are obviously what they are. So I could see them being the 3 seed, hosting a wild card game. Whoever that winds up being, whether it is one of the NFC West teams, if it's Seattle, that's who they beat the last time they won a playoff game, whether it's Green Bay. I mean, in fact, I actually think, the Cowboys have been on the wrong end of, I'll call it poetry for far too long. I mean, things have been so hurtful for them and they've been so hurtful in the most dramatic possible way. I do think they're due in some sense in that department. And I think, to go back to the Aaron Rodgers thing, because for the Cowboys, it so often does come back to Aaron Rodgers. He's the guy who has spurned them in the playoffs twice in the last several years. I mean, I just think it would be fitting for Aaron Rodgers' final game as a Green Bay Packer to be a loss at Lambeau Field to the Dallas Cowboys, who he's tormented forever, who are now led by the head coach that he got kicked out of the building, and Mike McCarthy. And so I don't know at what stage of the playoffs happen, but I do feel that. I feel that in the air. A Cowboys win at Lambeau in the playoffs. It'd be sweet if it was the NFC title game. But as long as it's the Cowboys beating Aaron Rodgers, I think, they could get blown out by 50 the next week, and I think we'd all still be fine.
Casey Bryant, let's hear your rapid fire in terms of where the Cowboys are in the NFC East come the end of the season.
Well, I'm not a total New York homer. I don't think the Giants are going 17-0. They'll probably at least drop 1. So I'll say 16-1. The Cowboys, I mean, they'll probably win 1 game, maybe 2. I see the Cowboys being probably hovering around that 9-8 mark. They probably will win the division by 1. I think the division isn't going to have a 12-game winner. I think this is going to be another one of those years where everything is very even, not because the teams are bad, but because I think that the playing field is very level. So I think you're going to see a lot of 4 teams going 1-1 against each other, because even the games last year in a down year for the NFC East were dogfights to the end. So I think that the Cowboys will probably win the division by 1 game at 9-8. I think that the Giants will finish 8-9. I think Washington will be, at 7 wins. And Philadelphia will probably be at about 5 or 6.
Well, I'll tell you this. As an Eagles fan, RJ, us being, or the Eagles rather, not us, the Eagles being the possible X factor in the division, or possibly being that diamond in the rough in the division? No, I don't think so. No, I simply don't think so. I mean, hey, that would be great, but don't get my hopes up. Say it again?
We really saw great things out of that Stidham guy, or whatever his name was, in the fourth quarter. He'll be a great starter for you.
Well, let's see what John Gonzalez has to say about his Cowboys 10-7. And he also thinks that they should be the favorite to win the East. Ladies and gentlemen, RJ Ochoa, really, really good to have you here with us, sir. And manager and editor-in-chief of Blogging the Boys, SB Nation, home of the Dallas Cowboys. RJ, thank you so much for coming on here and kind of going into into overtime with us here. And we hope to have you back on in the future. And enjoy football season, the final Sunday the final Sunday without football all the way until February was yesterday. So now football all the way until February. RJ, thank you so much for coming on. We'll see you soon, hopefully.
Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate you having me. Have a great week. As far as your football teams are concerned, I hope you have a terrible fall. But, I mean, personal lives, wish you greatness, joy, blessings, celebrations, so as long as everything's sorted in the right way there, prosperity, peace, love, happiness to all of you, except for when it comes to your favorite football teams.
And the exact same to you, RJ. For all
Thank you very much, RJ. Have a great one. Oh, man. Well, that was pretty good stuff. I mean, listen, before we get Tyler Adele in here, or what I call him as Tom Hanks from Castaway when you see him, it's really all good stuff with RJ, guys. Casey, I want to ask you before we hop over to baseball. So RJ thinks that the Philadelphia Eagles are the X factor. I have to respectfully disagree with him, and I know we couldn't go over that much time with him, but I want to hear the two of you on your pitch to that one, or really your argument, where I think I truly believe the New York Football Giants, are the ones to beat in that division.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Philadelphia Eagles is that they don't really do one thing exceptionally well.
They know how to tank.
I don't think, like, Boston Scott isn't like a number one running back for that team. And you lose Carson Wentz now, and you have to adjust to being a full-time Jalen Hurts team. And whenever you
and possibly Joe Flacco as well.
And
are they even doing it with Jalen Hurts is the thing. Well, that's another question.
I don't think Joe Flacco is a starting quarterback in the NFL anymore. Joe Flacco couldn't even start over Sam Darnold on a bad New York Jets team. I mean, Joe Flacco is just there for mentorship, if nothing else, which is weird to think about because Jalen Hurts isn't really a pure passer. He's part of the new model of NFL quarterbacks where you have to be able to leave the pocket, throw on the run. Joe Flacco was kind of one of the last guardians of the stay in the pocket and throw kind of quarterback. They're becoming more relics. So I think this is, again, another year of development for the Philadelphia Eagles. You now have to have a change at head coach. You have a change at quarterback. All your most important positions are undergoing some kind of change. So I don't see them as being a great football team. Not so much the X factor. The only thing that they could play, I guess, is spoiler. So I suppose it depends on what your definition of X factor is.
Well, I think what Ian Schraier says, the read option, CB.
The read option.
Oh,
yeah. No, I also do have to respectfully disagree with RJ. I do think it'll actually be the Giants that are the top. I really think Dallas comfortably takes this division. I think it's going to be by probably, if we're being realistic, probably 2 games they take it by. So in week 16, we will know that the Dallas Cowboys have clinched the NFC East. But the Giants will be right there. They're building in the right direction at the very least. Saquon Barkley's going to be back. The offensive line, while they didn't necessarily improve it per se by signing anybody like big, but that's just it as well. You can't year after year keep swapping out guys. That's never going to fix anything. You got to allow, especially these younger guys, to grow a little bit and actually learn from the season prior. So I think that's going to be very important. But overall, I do think the Cowboys take it by 2 games, but the Giants will breathe down their necks for a little bit. It's really going to come down to that stretch, as RJ mentioned, because the NFL made the NFC East real weird this year with scheduling. It is wild, and it's going. And don't get me wrong, it's probably going to be a lot of fun, but it could get intense, especially if it's close down the stretch.
Well, I'll tell you this, and this is the last thing that we're going to do before we get to the two comments and then we bring Tom Hanks in here. The one thing that I want to say here is that the only thing that RJ maybe could be saying is that maybe you do have 4/5 of your offensive line returning. Yes, they are a year older. Can they get back to that form in Philadelphia? I personally don't think so. How well will Jalen Hurts do? I don't know either. It doesn't make much sense here. John Gonzalez says that Jalen Hurts is a problem for the Birds. I completely agree. Ian Schraier says 8 to 9 wins is the expectation for the New York Giants. Anything over that is gravy and probably wins the division. Not expecting division in 21 for Big Blue. Okay, well, and then here, I don't normally say this. This is Brian Morales. I think Joe Judge figures it out. Giants win the NFC East. Sorry, Joey. I'll tell you this, B. I personally agree with you. I think that they might really take it over the top. That secondary is, bar none, one of the best that I've seen in a long time. Next here from Ian Schraier. Anything less than 8 wins for New York Giants sends Garrett and Gettleman out the door. Merritt did not spend all that money in the offseason to sit in last place. I don't expect them to be in last place again, but I expect them to be either but obviously 1 through 3. Okay, so now let us bring in ladies and gentlemen, from Castaway, and one of the best actors in Tom Hanks, who has been stuck on an island after a FedEx plane air crash and has been partying with the Wilson volleyball for the last 4 years. Tyler Adele, welcome to the program.
Yeah, hey, Joe. How are you? Rob, nice to see you. Casey, nice to finally formally meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Tyler.
Yeah, okay. So now, ladies and gentlemen, all joking aside there, that is my our partner here at the Eastern Observer. He's one of the co-hosts of the Essential Wrestling Podcast, but can talk all things sports. We'd like to welcome him on to episode number 63. Guys, let's get things moving here in Major League Baseball. Let's start things off here with Anthony Rizzo, Joey Gallo traded to the New York Yankees. Rob DeLuca, you're a Yankees fan. I know Casey is a Mets fan, and Tyler on his good day is a Yankees fan. But DeLuca, Anthony Rizzo, Joey Gallo, a pair of Paisans heading over to the Bronx. How good does this feel? And right now, in this Rizzo-Gallo era, they're 3-0.
This era has been fun so far, especially if your name's Anthony Rizzo. You could not get off to a hotter start to debut as a New York Yankee. I expect they got very loud standing ovations in the Bronx tonight as they returned home to face the Baltimore Orioles. So that was probably really exciting, and I hope that they continue these hot streaks. To say the least, I'm actually a little surprised that they are Yankees after all of this, because Anthony Rizzo had been linked to the Boston Red Sox for the longest time, and I'm talking like a couple of weeks leading to the trade deadline. People thought it was almost certain that Rizzo was going to go to Boston. So to hear that, so out of nowhere, Brian Cashman swoop in and take him from out under Boston's legs is incredible. But I'm also a little confused because I expected the Yankees to be sellers because they're just not having the season that is expected of the New York Yankees, especially with the roster that they have. They're sitting in 4th place right before the deadline. And then those 3 wins against Miami put them into 3rd place as they trail the Baltimore Orioles 4-0 here in the 4th inning. So the pitcher that they acquired from the Los Angeles Angels in Haney is off to a terrible start. So we will see where that goes. But no, nonetheless, as an Italian-American myself, having Gallo and Rizzo on here is a load of fun.
Yeah. And just before we get to Casey and to Tyler on this, there is something here from so the Chicago Cubs obviously traded Rizzo, Baez, and Bryant. According to SportsCenter, this is a pretty cool stat here. On Friday, Anthony Rizzo homered in his Yankees debut. On Saturday, Javier Baez homered in his Mets debut. And on Sunday, Chris Bryant homered in his San Francisco Giants debut. And there are the first trio of former teammates in the modern era to start the season on the same team and then homer in their respective debuts with a new team later that season. That is some pretty cool stuff. And I want to just get to the Anthony Rizzo home run, the Chris Bryant home run, and the Javier Baez home run. And then Casey and Tyler are going to take it away. Take a peek at this, folks.
Ever have to buy a meal there. And now he drills one deep to right field. There it goes. See ya. His first Yankee home run, and it gives the Yankees a 1-0 lead.
Alonso at first and 2 out, and Baez gets one in the air to left field. Winker going back, looking up, and it's out of here! Javi Baez with a 2-run homer. A towering shot. His first home run as a New York Met. Well,
Cha-cha.
deep left field. It is a home run! Chris Bryant, in his first game as a Giant, has hit a home run for the Giants' first run of
That's pretty cool. Not only that, to see all three of those former teammates now hit home runs in their first at bat. All good stuff. Casey Bryant
and Joey, they were all at home too.
Yeah, that was.
Oh no, wait, no, I'm sorry. The Yankees were in Miami, but you couldn't tell from the crowd noise. That's my bad.
and also keep that in mind too. When Derek Jeter spoke with Meredith Marakovitz as well on Yes Network, he also had something to say. I don't have that clip though, but she did ask about the influx of Yankees fans coming down, that in just a few days ago, obviously for that 3-game set, and really seeing about the winning and the lack of fans. And he basically called out Marlins fans and saying, come on down, buy some tickets. We want to win. He's not used to the losing. Casey Bryant, we got to see Anthony Rizzo and Joey Gallo over to the Bronx. Obviously, you're a Mets guy. What do you see with the New York counterpart?
Well, what I see from the New York counterpart is exactly what we've been seeing since the 1970s. If the Yankees have any kind of remote need or even just want, if they just wake up in the morning and decide that they want something, they're going to go out and get it. So the fact that Rob is able to sit there and with a straight face say, yeah, I really thought the Yankees might be sellers this deadline. I want to laugh at him and punch him in the face. Because the New York Yankees will never be deadline sellers. And the one time that they were deadline sellers, they were able to flip Aroldis Chapman for freaking Gleyber Torres. So I never want to hear a word about the Yankees being sellers ever again. It's never going to happen. Put it out of your mind.
What grinds Casey Bryant's gears? Here we go.
Especially since the Yankees are still very much so in striking distance for a playoff position. They have been able, for as hot as the Red Sox and the Rays have gotten off to, those two, it's not sustainable for either one of them. And the Yankees are still waiting for reinforcements. They're about to get Luis Severino back. He's making a rehab start in Somerset. Okay, so the Yankees, I thought Rizzo was going to go to first base. Luke Voigt is a 30 home run hitter. We could get Anthony Rizzo. It's fine. Who cares? Bring him in. Oh, we don't have anyone to play in the outfield yet? Oh, what's that? We have too many people to play in the outfield. Bring Joey Gallo in. Who cares? We're the Yankees. We can foot any bill we want. You want Rolex? You want Rolex? So let's get you a Rolex. You want Ichiro in right field? He's owed $20 million. Who cares? Bring him in. It doesn't matter. It's a party in here. And of course they're going to perform out the gate. Raul Ibanez performed out the gate. Raul Ibanez, by that point, was the crypt keeper. He was ancient. You could find him in the ruins of Egypt.
Playoff hero.
Hero. Anthony Rizzo.
Ian Schraier says this. Casey looks like he's ready to blow over Rizzo.
Of course I am, because Anthony Rizzo comes in and hits 2 home runs immediately, and they're not just like, they're Yankee Stadium home runs. They are moonshots to right field. And now all the Yankee fans that were saying this team is a disgrace, I'm never watching this team again, this team is unforgivable, they have no heart, we need to fire Boone, we need to fire Cashman. Come October, when they're playing in the wild card game, they will sit there with their hooded sweatshirt and unbuttoned Yankee jersey with their cross chain coming around their neck and their sideways backwards Yankee cap, all saying, I always believed in this team, this team's got hot. This team's got hot. Derek Jeter. Sick of it.
Well, and this is something else from another Yankees fan, Brian Morales, Rizzo and Gallo. That's amore.
gotta give it
and
to
now, And now, just before we get to Tyler, Tyler, your friend Jason Weston, the Yankees' place in the standings is just unfortunate division standings. They have a better record than the Mets, yet the Mets are in first place in the NL East, and the Yanks are third in the NL East. Tyler, first time we've had you on in about double-digit episodes. Take it away. What do you see with Rizzo and Gallo?
Yeah, it's been quite a bit since I've been here, but yeah, Jason he beat me to a point I was going to make. It kind of just, in a weird way, shows you that the AL East is super tight no matter what to begin with. So even when Yankee fans think the Yankees are out of it, I mean, if you look through the standings, like I'm doing currently at the moment, in most of the other divisions, they're a first or a second place team. You know what I'm saying? It's interesting. With Gallo and Rizzo, I like the Rizzo trade a lot more than I like the Gallo trade. I feel like the Rizzo trade addresses an immediate need in the lineup for a balanced left-handed hitter, which is something we haven't had since Brett Gardner was halfway decent 5 years ago, and before that, Mark Teixeira. I mean, Gallo, you kind of get what you get with him. You know you're going to take on all those strikeouts. You know you're going to take on a lot of 0 for 4 games, 0 for 3 with 2 walks. But I don't want to say clutch factor, but he comes up big in those big moments. So I could see why they could need him in the outfield or want to have him around the team. But I mean, just looking at Rizzo's stat line from the first 3 games of his Yankee career, 4 for 5, 2 home runs, 2 runs scored, 3 walks. I mean, tonight he's 0 for 1. Tonight I'll kind of just do one of those. Never happened. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of going back to what Rob was saying quick before. Yeah, you're kind of an idiot for thinking they were going to be sellers. I mean, it's just one of those things where, like I said, you look at the Yankees' record at 56-48. They're only 7 games out of the division, 2 games out of the wild card. Even if the Yankees, in my opinion, were gonna say, screw it, forget about the season, let's do what we got to do. Guys like Rizzo and Joey Gallo, and for the Mets, Javier Baez, for the Giants, Chris Brown, those guys guys like them don't come up at every trade deadline. You know what I mean? Like, Rizzo's still got a solid 6 years in his prime, maybe 8 years of consistent hitting. Obviously, as you get older, I think you'll see his home run numbers drop. But Gallo, you got one more year control out of him as is. Seeing that, Clint Frazier with his vertigo issues, no one knows what's happening with him. I don't even think Aaron Hicks is in this atmosphere anymore. I don't know where he is.
No, he's out of the season. He's dead, injured.
Yeah. So, I know he's injured. I just don't forget it.
No, he's dead. No, he's dead. He's dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
You had it right. He's dead. Yeah.
You're filling the. I mean, I was talking to Jason about it before. I kind of believe it's the beginning of the end of Clint Frazier because the Yankees like to trade every.
That for 3 years though. So
yeah, but now they have a legitimate reason to do it. Now they have legitimate reasoning to do it. Jason, on the other hand, thinks it's the beginning of end of Aaron Hicks. I disagree only because switch hitters in baseball nowadays are just too valuable. Which I hate to say because I hate Aaron Hicks and his stupid face, but. Yeah, I mean, the trades are for the Yankees. I think they win both of those trades, and I think you're going to see Rizzo for a Yankee for quite a few years after this.
I shouldn't say I thought they'd be sellers. I thought they'd do nothing because, I get that you don't.
Now the story changes.
Like that being available too often, but again, I mean, I know Gallo and Story were linked to the Yankees. Rizzo was never linked to the Yankees at any point leading up to the deadline. So that's why it came as a shock to me because
Rob, I got to cut you off before I forget what I'm about to say. The whole reason why I'm here, anything you said about Ian is a lie. He knows he's not here tonight because he knows I'm going to give him the business for all the prospects that we don't have any value on that were moved to other teams for these 2 guys.
No, you're absolutely right. Those trades were win for the Yankees. They kept every single one of their top 10 prospects and still got Gallo and Rizzo. So there's no question about that. I just seriously thought they'd do nothing. If it was me personally, I thought nothing was going to happen. They're like, oh, we're only one game over 500. Let's just ride it out with whatever happens and move on to next year. But no, but as Casey definitely, the Yankees will literally never do that.
Right.
So evaluating trades as wins and losses for the Yankees is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Can anyone out there anywhere name a single prospect the Yankees have traded away other than Jay Buhner that they regretted? Like in this trade for Joey Gallo or Anthony Rizzo, in 10 years, you will never remember it. Never. Meanwhile, for the New York Mets, they are sitting there going, we can't give away this prospect. We'll never grow another one. We can't do it. Good Mets prospects come around once in a generation, and when they do, we trade them for Robinson Cano.
So
he's got a point there. And now on top of that, they don't.
Circling to Ian's comment real quick.
So let me pull up. Hold on before you get to it. Our good friend Ian Schraier, co-host of the Primetime Rundown, says, let's call it what it is. Who are these guys they, meaning the New York Yankees, sold off? Casey, save me.
So here's the thing. Nobody knew who they were. I didn't know who at least 4 or 5 of them were, which is fine. You don't know the names of a lot of those AAA, AA guys, whatever. But they were good enough to get Anthony Rizzo and Joey Gallo.
Well, what does it matter?
I'm going to deal with you and Javi Baez in a minute. Don't worry.
So, Casey, I want to throw this one to you here. Jason, Tyler's friend, says, Yankees trade deadline plan. We have no big lefties. Get all the lefties now. Every single one of them.
Why not?
Yeah, that's fair.
Let's do it. Can Barry Bonds still swing a bat? Let's get him in the lineup. Who cares?
It'd be better than Brett Gardner.
It doesn't matter. Oh, we need a Brett Gardner replacement. What's Joey Votto doing? Can he play left field? Bring him in. Sure.
all the paisanos come to the Bronx, Casey.
Yeah.
Guys, Javier Baez was traded from the Chicago Cubs to the New York Mets. We got to see, obviously, he hit his first home run at Citi Field against Cincinnati. The Mets did lose that game. But the fact of the matter is that, well, in the way I look at it, you have Francisco Lindor on the injured list right now, and you've got Jeff McNeil, who you won't replace at second base. That's normally where Javier Baez's alternate position is. Well, I want to ask Casey Bryant this first question. When Lindor gets healthy, where does Baez go? Does he go to third base?
I think that this is really a move that's banking on the designated hitter hitting the National League next year. It's also a safety valve in case Francisco Lindor can't come back this year, not in an everyday capability. Because what Lindor hurt was his oblique, if I'm remembering correctly, which greatly hinders your ability to swing. Yes. And so if they're banking on Francisco Lindor not being able to come back until very, very late in the game, so you need an everyday shortstop. And Luis Guillorme, nice little player, good defensive player on a spots case, but his second game as full-time starting shortstop, the New York Mets, he had 3 errors in 1 inning. You needed a real shortstop to come in there to play every day. So Baez is able to come in, and now you have also a safety option in the event that J.D. Davis can't go every day. So you can throw Javi Baez at second and Jeff McNeil to third. Or if Jeff McNeil gets into another one of his slumps, he can't hit lefties so good, Javi Baez is hitting over 300 against lefties this season. Now, granted, all of this is, of course, contingent on Javi Baez staying healthy, which at this point in time, at 7:33 p.m., at least Central Time for me, he isn't, because he already pulled up lame on a ground ball towards first base tonight, had to be checked out by the trainers and was hunched over in agonizing pain in the Mets dugout. He is staying in the game, but now that's something that the Mets have to monitor again. You know, another hamstring injury, another ankle injury, it doesn't matter. This franchise is cursed. So it's honestly, it makes way more sense for the Mets to get Javi Baez, though, in the grand scheme of things, than Chris Bryant, because Chris Bryant wouldn't have had anywhere to play that wouldn't displace someone big like Michael Conforto or like J.D. Davis or Dom Smith. Say what you will about Dom Smith and Michael Conforto's performance this year, but these are allegedly big pieces of your future. So bringing in Chris Bryant and then having to shoehorn and play a game of shuffle, shuffle the cups here, Now you at least have a plug-and-place option with Javi Baez that also gives you the safety net that you so desperately needed.
DeLuca, your thoughts on Javier Baez heading to the New York Mets?
It's a good move for them. It's pretty much everything Casey pointed to is accurate, correct, as usual. And honestly, I think it will help them because until Francisco Lindor comes back, and more importantly, until Jake DeGrom comes back, along with some of that other pitching company, which is right now looking like September, the Mets need to just exist and hang on in a weak NL East, which is just hang on to first place and just hang on to first place, which they still are. All they got to do is win two out of 3 games every series, and they'll do that. And right now they've continued to do this all season, hanging on to a slim 3-game lead over the Philadelphia Phillies, the Atlanta Braves, who have performed underwhelmingly all season. It'll be interesting to see if they turn it back around. I'm not so sure that'll happen, but I mean, you can't rule it out just because almost like the NFC East, the NL East is kind of a dogfight between those top 3 of the Mets, the Phillies, and the Braves. You don't know which way it could go. I personally think that the Mets have just more depth in the personnel to hang on until their big guns come back.
So I want to just before we get to Tyler, Jason, your comment is going to be coming up in just a few moments. Ian Schreier's comment here, just because we are trying to be organized and in order. Mets will not win division. Book it. Okay. And then Ian said, been saying it for a month now. Tyler, finish your thought on Javier Baez heading over to Queens.
It's funny because Ian's been saying for a month now that the Mets aren't going to win the division, but I'm pretty sure they've been in the lead in the division for the last month. So that's pretty interesting. Okay.
Or even hanging on. How? But and that's the whole thing too. Is that just want to cut you off? Taking a peek at the statistics right now and the standings, the Mets 55-49. They're 3.5 games over the Philadelphia Phillies. Really, everybody is at or below 500, 4-6 in their last 10 for the Mets. They've lost 1. They lost yesterday. The Phillies are 52-53, 1 game under 500. They are 3.5 games out of the division, 7.5 out of the wild card. Atlanta is 52-54, 4 games out, and then Washington and Miami are lower than that. Tyler, continue.
Yeah, so I mean, just circling back to that quick, I mean, you're going to tell me the only team above 500 isn't going to win the division. I think you're insane. I also don't like Ian at the moment.
Well, I will say this, though. As a Mets fan, I can understand, and I'm sure Casey can also attest to this, too, where we have seen the New York Mets ahead in the division at the All-Star break, and then they plummet. Then they go downhill.
Joey.
Here we go.
Joey. You've seen the New York Mets in a division on September 17th and plummet. Okay? Twice. I mean that's why no one has faith, is because we were 14 days away from the end of the season and the New York Mets couldn't hang on to a division lead. So if you want to know why Mets fan is comfortable right now, of course that's why. In 2007, 2008 are still very raw. It's still very real. This franchise is still very whatever Indian burial ground that they built Citi Field on, moving just the headstones like we're in the movie Poltergeist, because the Wilpons couldn't be bothered to pay for an empty parking lot. So that's why no one is secure.
I mean, to give the Mets some credit this season, it's your first year with a new owner, a new outlook on things. Try and be a little positive for 2.5 months.
All right. Look, you want positive? I'll give you positive. Okay. The fact that they got Javi Baez at all is a positive, because that shows that they have a willingness to address a problem. It is a problem. It is a positive, because tell me tell you with a straight face that a Wilpon regime would not have trotted out Matt Reynolds for the rest of the season.
No, you would have re-signed Yoenis Cespedes for 7 more years. He would have broken his heels again.
No, I'm serious. For a shortstop position, the Mets would have in a Wilpon year would have ridden Luis Guillorme out, and if Luis Guillorme gets hurt, then what? In the past, we would have trotted out Ty Kelly to be your everyday shortstop, or Omar Quintanilla, or Ronnie Cedeno, or any of these patchwork crap-tastic quadruple A players. To get an all-star in Javi Baez is a real move. That's a positive.
Look, I'm going to call. How about? I don't call it a positive. I'm not going to call it. I'm going to say it's like right in the middle. I think for what you were looking for, best available, no doubt. Do I think necessarily that was where you should have went? I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think the Mets really should have went after Chris Bryant a little bit harder. I mean,
but why? Where would he play? Third base, JD Davis.
On the baseball field, sir.
well, then tell me who you're leaving out. Then is Chris Bryant playing left field? Is he playing?
I mean, he's played. Joe, fact check me on this one. I'm pretty sure Chris Bryant's played 6 or 7 of the 9 defensive positions this year already.
But the problem is that those 2 positions that are left out of there, I believe, is shortstop. So he does have a point there.
My point was that you could have made things work. Look, I'm not saying that Baez was a bad pickup, but let's not pretend like he's not some kind of liability here either in the field. I mean, guy makes some pretty silly errors in big moments. Everybody loves to give the Yankees.
Todd Frazier, but we trotted him out there every day for 2 years.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's just as a defensive player, Javier Baez kind of bothers me a bit. He's just
a literal Gold Glover.
Yeah, and he literally makes some of the worst errors in some of the biggest situations I've ever seen. And it's just, I just don't think he's going to be that productive at the plate. I mean, yes, I know he had a home run this weekend, and since then he's been, including tonight now, 0 for 9 with quite a few strikeouts, which another thing you all love to say, oh, Yankees just put 200 more strikeouts in their outfield, yo. Yeah, Baez is 3rd in the league in strikeouts, buddy. I just don't see – I just don't think you absolutely needed him. That's just my opinion. I also don't care enough about the Mets to really give you much more than that.
Well, that much – yeah, okay.
So the next thing here is with Ian – Baez is a Gold Glover, 2020, I believe. Last year he was a Gold Glover.
No, look, I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just I think when it matters most, I just don't feel like you can fall back on him.
More so than Luis Guillorme?
Well, I mean, you've been falling back on him for how long now? That experiment should have ended years ago.
Casey can play this game all day and will not lose, Tyler. I would tread carefully on trying to out-Mets him, please.
So let's keep moving on here, ladies and gentlemen, and let's go
must
to
we?
the...
What? What's that?
I said, must we?
I mean, how much time do we got left? 17 minutes? I can kill 16.
Let's go on to the next topic, and let's go to the aforementioned Chris Bryant getting traded to the San Francisco Giants. He got a chance to chat, he got a chance to get a phone call in the dugout, and right standing there was our good friend Anthony Iapoce, the hitting coach of the Chicago Cubs. We'll play that video, and then we'll also play the home run that he hit first in his first at bat with the San Francisco Giants. First, let's take a peek at the first one, and then we'll go to the second.
As always, and there's Chris Bryant on the phone, still in the Cubs uniform, and there you have it. He has just been dealt to the San Francisco Giants. You see the warm embraces, number 17, a pillar in the Cubs history, and we're going to keep you posted right here as things continue to unfold. Trade deadline day as KB wipes away the tears. An emotional day for a lot of people involved around these parts. More Cubs Live, trade deadlines.
Cha-cha-cha. Deep left field. It is a home run. Chris Bryant in his first game as a Giant has hit a home run for the Giants' first run of the day.
Okay, so now obviously we got to see Chris Bryant get traded to the San Francisco Giants. Casey, I want to start with you. You had brought up obviously how the positioning in New York, or in Queens rather, was not really where Chris Bryant was supposed to go, should not have landed. Javier Baez was the better pickup. Chris Bryant now in San Francisco. Where does he fit, and where do you see him playing out the rest of this 2021 campaign on this Cinderella story Giants team?
Well, the Giants had more of a need at the primary positions where Chris Bryant plays. Evan Longoria is on the 60-day IL, so they're missing their starting everyday third baseman. They can plug him in right there so that you can lighten the load on a role player like Wilmer Flores. That's an immediate improvement at third base that you're able to now up the game at. And even if you wanted to put Chris Bryant somewhere else, if you wanted to put him at first base while Brandon Belt is not healthy, go ahead. You can do that. If you want to put him in the outfield and displace Alex Dickerson, who's hitting .215, you can do that. There's more versatility where Chris Bryant can play that fits in better with the San Francisco Giants than any other franchise in Major League Baseball. Not only that, the San Francisco Giants have surpassed all expectations in the NL West by leading the division. No one would have put them ahead of the Dodgers or Padres in looking at the teams on paper. So now that all of a sudden they've tripped over themselves and find themselves at the top spot in the division, and you have the Dodgers adding Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. You have the Padres adding Frazier from Pittsburgh and making all kinds of moves. The Giants had to keep pace. You had to all of a sudden go, all right, if we're really going to do this, this might be the only year in the next 5-6 years where we're outright better than the Dodgers and Padres. We might as well go for it this year. They went all in with Bryant. It's a savvy move. He fits in perfectly with that lineup, and it gives them some much-needed power, which is the one aspect of their offense that they really weren't getting consistently.
Anyone take it next?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's a perfect move for the Giants. It just as Casey mentioned, they're not 100% healthy, and this helps solidify that. Just, you have some flexibility in where Bryant can play. So it's going to, I think, and it does bring a power hitter into the lineup where, as Casey said, not totally getting it, but hey, the Giants are playing with house money at this point. They were not supposed to be in first place at any point of this season, except for maybe game one. And then that would be it. And now here we are in August, and they're still out in front. And I think that as Casey said, they're just pushing it all in, and they're going to say, you know what? Screw it. This probably won't happen again next year. So let's just go right now and go for it all, and whatever happens, happens, because this literally is a house money season now for the San Francisco Giants. So they're going to have fun with it.
And he fits right in, too, as Casey said, up and down the lineup, but also for those that don't really follow the San Francisco Giants and followed the old Tampa Bay Rays, Evan Longoria was their starting third baseman to start the year, but due to a left shoulder sprain that put him on the 60-day injured list, it fits right in perfectly. He fits right in there perfectly as the everyday third baseman now. And as you brought up, sometimes he can replace Alex Dickerson in left field. He can also play, as Tyler brought up earlier, multiple positions with this San Francisco team. And again, where the needs are in San Francisco, Chris Bryant really fills that in there. Tyler, redemption tour for you. Let's see what we can do about Chris Bryant here in San Francisco.
I mean, Chris Bryant to San Francisco was surprising, not because I didn't think they needed him, because they did, but it was more or less like, even though San Francisco's kind of like right in everybody's face at the moment, like sitting first in the NL West, I kind of forgot about them, to be totally honest with you. I didn't even consider them to be an option. Joe, I think you and I had spoken a couple of times as we got closer and closer to the trade deadline. I had expressed to you that I wanted Chris Bryant here. Kind of glad we didn't get him. I feel like
it wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't make any sense.
It would have made sense if you were ready to completely ditch what you had as far as Andujar and not moving Rougned Odor to a different position every day. But for a day-to-day basis, no, it didn't make sense. He's somebody I'd rather kind of take my chances on in free agency if I'm the one trying to sign him. Also, again, left-handed bat was the big thing. But I think like Bryant's going to fit in there like a glove, literally. I mean, he's got his position for at least another 45 days, I believe. I think Evan Longoria has only been on the IL for week and a half, or something like that, or he got put back on. He's going to be a big piece for them to maintain their spot. I think that was a good move for them.
So let's bring up a couple of Ian Schreier's comments here. So we'll refer to Casey on this one to start. Brandon Crawford having a career year for San Francisco. Posey Longoria somehow playing 10 years younger. Wilmer a cleanup hitter. Kapler for NL Manager of the Year. Casey, remember just a couple of years ago, it's an absolute disaster when Gabe Kapler was in Philadelphia. People were calling for his firing. People were saying that the analytics show and the analytics debacle is a legitimate joke in the world of baseball. And now he is basically saying, haha, to all of you and saying that this really is working. Do you see what Ian is talking about here, where Gabe Kapler is a serious candidate for NL Manager of the Year?
You know, it's a funny argument to always think about, because the coach of the year is always going to go to the best performing team. And in this case, it's the Giants. And it always makes me think back to the movie Moneyball, where it kind of portrays Art Howe as being so anti what the organization wanted him to do, but still getting all of the credit in all the media for being this great manager, for going along with Billy Beane's plan, even though he was so vocally against it. It always colors my judgment whenever I look at the coach of the year, because it doesn't erase what Gabe Kapler did in Philadelphia. He made questionable roster decisions. He would frequently get run from games that he shouldn't have been. I mean, he was not a fan favorite in Philadelphia at all. And when he got hired by San Francisco, there were a lot of people kind of tugging at their shirt collars going, I don't know about this one. But he is getting kind of bailed. It's hard to say whether he's getting bailed out by overperforming players or if he is himself inspiring those performances, because it's true. Buster Posey, after taking a year off, is back to hitting .330 behind the dish for this team. Brandon Crawford is back to being an all-star player. I mean, you're getting contributions from guys like Donovan Solano in the lineup all of a sudden. And like, it's fascinating what the Giants have been able to build sort of off of this Moneyball kind of formula. And credit has to be given where it's due to the coaching staff and Gabe Kapler, because it's hard to say that they're doing it in spite of him.
Yeah, not only that too, but also you get to see what their record is too. And if I'm not mistaken, they're about 15 to 20 games over 500. They are, or rather, nearly 15 to 20. Completely off there. They are 27 games over 500. They're 6-4 in their last 10. They have won 66, lost 39. They're 3 games ahead of the Dodgers, who really is a perfect segue into the next into the next topic. But just before we get there, though, this is something else too that Ian brought up too. Can't forget the rejuvenation of almost all of their pitchers. And this is something else too, guys, is that the bottom line here is that I want to just say a few of these names here. And I want DeLuca and Casey to really hear me out here. Kevin Gausman, Johnny Cueto, Anthony DeSclafani, Jake McGee, Aaron Sanchez, Alex Wood. Guys, all 3 of you, we have seen these names. These are all veteran players, and I can't believe it. It just shows we're getting old. Aaron Sanchez at one point was a top prospect in Toronto. Now he is a veteran hanging on in San Francisco, but these careers are beginning to rejuvenate, as Ian said. That's something else here. DeLuca, I want to throw this one to you.
I definitely lost the question there because of my terrible Wi-Fi. As it gets later, it gets worse. So, okay. At this point, I need a chainsaw to the router. So if you could repeat the question, that would be great.
Okay. We're going to throw that one to Casey Bryant. I want to see what your thoughts are with that rejuvenation of the starters.
Yeah, I mean, and not only do you have a rejuvenation in the pitching staff, you also just have some great names in there, like Harlan Garcia. I love that name. And Anthony DiSclafani. You do have some
and DiSclafani's a 10-game winner, no less.
Yeah, he is. So you've got some really great performers in that pitching staff, and you are right. It's by committee. You don't have one pitcher that scares you. Even Kevin Gausman, to agree, who's having a fantastic season. Coming into this year, he wasn't oh my God, they have Kevin Gausman on the mound. We got to look out for Kevin Gausman. But he's emerged now as a bona fide number 1, number 2 pitcher. So for them to be able to ride in this momentum of, okay, to liken it back to the Mets, for instance, Jake DeGrom day, you're getting a Jake DeGrom performance. And then by day 5, when it's like David Peterson or, guy that they just called up from AAA, like Tyler McGill, all right, we're going to have to perform differently on day number 5 than we are day number 1. The fact that they have 5 guys that they can trot out there and know you're getting a solid performance where you have a chance to win, they can go deep into games. Their ERAs are all hovering around 3. That provides a level of consistency and placidness in your approach to the plate. It does affect how you hit. If you know, okay, we have to get runs for this guy. We have to, okay, we can lay back for this guy. The fact that they have such consistency across the board makes things so much easier for the entire organization top down.
So now as we are just beginning to get short on time here, I want to get to the next to one more plug here. Brian Morales, just got to say this, former Wagner College standout and AL Rookie of the Year, Andrew Bailey is the pitching coach for the Giants. Yes, he is. # plug for the employer. All good stuff there, B. Next one is going to be Max Scherzer and Trey Turner were traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers. That is a big deal because where does Trey Turner play, guys? You see Corey Seager is the starting shortstop there. Gavin Lux is the starting second baseman. Max Muncy is at first. At third is Justin Turner. Pollock in left. Bellinger in center. Right field is Mookie Betts. Will Smith is behind the dish. Obviously, you got the number 3 spot for Max Scherzer. Where do you see Trey Turner fit into this equation, Tyler Adele, and then Casey?
I'm going to eat my words on pretty much everything I said before, but why Trey Turner was in that deal kind of is beyond me. I mean, just like everything you were saying, there's literally nowhere for him to play unless they were short like a hot dog guy for the rest of the season. I mean,
the depth.
Yeah, it's a depth move, but it's like you put Trey Turner on the bench and use him in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, or you know what I mean? It just doesn't. To me, it's weird. You know what I mean?
The only thing that I would say is that if anything, any injuries would pop up. But then, Casey, who do you move to the bench for Trey Turner? How do you keep a player like Trey Turner on the bench down the stretch?
The fact that Gavin Lux is on the 10-day IL, you're able to provide, again, it's all about flexibility, right? It's all about trying to provide options for when guys aren't there. Corey Seager is only just now coming off of the IL, so you're kind of allowing for that transition. Trey Turner's inclusion is, a luxury problem, Again, this is a very similar attitude to the Yankees, where the rich teams in baseball are just able to throw money at the problem and not have to worry about consequences because, we'll keep Trey Turner on the bench. Who cares? That's a problem for a mid-market or a small market team where we have to get this guy in because he's eating so much of our salary. He's eating, this percentage of the pie. We have to be able to get him into the starting lineup. For the Dodgers, his contract is nothing. So they're able to be like, all right, he's going to play shortstop today, and then, of course, you go play third. They're playing it like a Sandlot game where everyone can kind of play where they want today. It's fine. I think that the inclusion in the deal might be looking more towards the long-term future of bringing in Trey Turner and phasing out certain other guys, allowing for maybe a departure from Justin Turner, allowing for a departure from Chris Taylor or Gavin Lux from that organization at the end of this year. This may be the kind of inclusion where maybe it doesn't move the needle too much this season, but in 2022 and beyond, if they're able to retain Trey Turner, that's the kind of thing that they're planning for. This may be playing the long game for the Dodgers.
So Ian thinks Lux to the bench, Trey Turner and Corey Seager make up the middle of the infield. I mean, now, DeLuca, you got to see what Gavin Lux was all about. He was a top 10 prospect for the Dodgers. And now, all of a sudden, it's going to be it might just be those two. What do you got?
Yeah, I think unfortunately when it comes down to it, Lux is going to have to be moved to the bench. You know, I mean, it's a tough situation. It's a good problem to have when you're the Dodgers. You know, you're trying to get back into this race here with the Giants. You know, and obviously again a race that wasn't supposed to happen, but nonetheless, I think that Lux will have to be the odd man out on most days just because, like you said, Joy, you simply cannot bench someone like Trey Turner on the reg. It's just he's too good of a player. He's too important. You need him out there on most days. So that I believe that's ultimately where this has to lie.
Yeah, I think Gavin Lux is going to get benched. I hope you guys agree, but I don't think he would be necessarily benched off of performance. I think it's just basically a seniority thing.
You're exactly.
You just add a room, and Gavin Lux also had some lingering hamstring issues. Joey, I'm sorry, but
that's
you
okay.
got to keep in mind too.
There's too much depth on the team, which is never a bad thing. It just becomes the problem of when you need them, there could be some rust on them as well. And you never know what could be happening. And this is, again, something that our good friend Ian Schraier has said. Lux is only a year removed from his rookie season that saw him sent down to AAA. Let him get more AAA at-bats. He will come around, but needs bigger at-bats to get his confidence up. And Trey is an all-star. Lux is not. Yeah, and you know what? And that's another thing, too, is that when you make a move like that, you obviously want to build Gavin Lux to become this, the second baseman of your future, or the right side infielder of your future. And right now, when you're trying to do this win now, Gavin Lux, yes, will get his rings. There's no doubt about it as a rookie. But now we're going to see what Trey Turner and Corey Seager make up in that middle of the infield. There's no doubt about it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have run out of time here on the Eastern Observer. So for Rob DeLuca, Casey Bryant, Tyler Adele, myself, Joey Jarzynka, for all of us here at the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Group, we will all see you next Monday night, August 9th. Rob DeLuca and myself will be here. It's going to be a good one. Ian Schraier is going to be on vacation for a second week in a row. For all of us here, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We'll see you next time.